VW convertible, servicemen, and how it all connects. Vickie Watson shares great memories of her first ride. Hello, I'm your host, Gary Neidert. Thanks for listening to my First Ride podcast. You haven't noticed yet? These podcasts are about nostalgia, automotive nostalgia. You know, reliving the events, sights, smells, and emotions of special memories connected to our first rides. Said another way, it's about allowing our memories to travel back in time and experience our special car moments all over again. A couple of years ago, I contacted today's guest asking her if she would be open to talking about her first ride, a 1964 green Volkswagen convertible. Recently, we were able to record our conversation where she talked about how she bought the VW, dragging Main Street in downtown Denison, Texas, and then who bought the VW when it came time for her to sell it. She was a delight to talk with, and I really enjoyed learning about the VW and her adventures while recording this episode. So let's get right into today's episode as I talk with Vickie Watson about her adventures with the VW. I know you're really going to enjoy listening to her. Vickie, welcome to my First Ride podcast. It's great to have you on the program.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
This is going to be a lot of fun to be able to find out the history of that Volkswagen, and more for a personal reason, but it'll be fun to hear your story. So,
yes,
I can't wait to hear more about your first ride, the Volkswagen. But if you would, tell me a little bit about yourself and what's been keeping you busy these days.
Well, I'm retired now, and retired from teaching school after 33 years, and had a long little story going along after retirement. My husband was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and he passed away early.
Sorry to hear that.
So it's just me and a golden retriever living out here in Tanglewood, which is a area near Lake Texoma.
Yeah. And
I'm from Denison, Texas, and I lived there for a while after he'd passed away. But anyway, I never thought I would come back to Denison or anywhere near it. My whole goal in my life was to get away from my mom and dad, and that's part of the story of the Volkswagen that we both share some interest in, personal interest. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I have 3 children and 3 grandchildren, but it's just me and the dog and lots of little creatures at night.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and talk about your first car. And we've talked a little bit before about how you came about to find the car and buy the car. Mm-hmm. But if you would, go ahead and tell the story of how that came about.
Well, in Denison back in 1968, the thing to do was to get in a car and go up and down Main Street. We called it Dragon Main Street. Mm-hmm. And the purpose for a girl was to hook up with a boy. Yeah. Okay. Find a new guy, a boyfriend or whatever. And I picked up one of my friends, and we were probably in my mom and dad's old Oldsmobile. I'm not sure, but Dad always had an old car that I got to drive. But and I had to learn how to drive standard, and the clutch was always persnickety. But we were dragging Main, my friend and I, and we had to turn off Main to come back around to get on the Main again and start over. And we drove around the street next to Main was it's Chestnut Street. And there at the corner was the Chevrolet dealership, and across from it was the used car lot. Mm-hmm. And there was my friend made a mention. She said, "Look at that car there." And I looked over, and it was a Volkswagen convertible sitting there, and it was beautiful, pretty. And we both just joked about, wonder who the lucky person would be to have that car. Never in my wildest dreams did I give it a second thought. And it was just a joke. And we drove on and did our thing that night. Well, maybe about less than a week later, something happened that changed all that. And my mother was working there at the Stakely Chevrolet house, and I think she must have worked out a deal. Maybe had it, her car payment taken out of her wages. Mm-hmm. But anyway, Mom and Dad didn't talk a lot, and I didn't ask questions back then. Not like kids would do today. Mm-hmm. And I was cooking supper, and my dad would come in from work, and he was helping me, and Mother would be in a few minutes. And she did drive in, and there was kind of a hush-hush discussion. And Dad turned to me and he said, "You'll finish supper. We'll be back in a few minutes." I had no earthly idea what was happening. And I thought it was kind of weird what they were up to. I didn't know. But about 20 minutes later, I heard this clicking sound. And I stopped my cooking. I was frying chicken, making gravy, cornbread rolls, the whole thing. And I had to turn everything off, and I ran to the back door and looked out. And there was this Volkswagen convertible sitting in the driveway. I don't remember my reaction. It probably was, "What are y'all doing? What's going on?" And because I still had no idea that this car would be in my life. Uh-huh. And Mom and Dad said, "We bought you a car so you can go to college." And I was going to go out to the local county college, Grayson County College. And at that time, I really didn't think, how am I going to get there and how am I going to get home? When you're a teenager, you don't think about the practical issues. Yeah. You're just, anyway. So I'm like, "What do you mean?" And Mom said, "I bought this car and for you." And I know she was paying it off. There was no way she could have given them a lump sum of money and bought it. So it was being paid off some way. So we had to sit down and eat supper though. And that just really irked me to death. That I wanted to get out and look at that car, that Volkswagen, and see it. And so anyway, we sat down. I don't remember eating too much of my fried chicken, but I got in that car with stipulation that I would not go downtown and drag Maine.
Oh man! Oh,
well, guess what? Guess what? I went across town and picked up my friend. I pulled up. And by the way, this Volkswagen convertible was the easiest thing to drive. Popping that clutch and shifting gears was like a dream compared to my dad's old cars that he had me learn how to drive.
Yeah.
I just took to it. It was just like wonderful. And this Volkswagen had been fixed up. I think there is a story behind it. And I don't know if, Gary, if you would know anything about it, but apparently it had belonged to an airman who was stationed at Parent Air Force Base there between Sherman and Denison. And he had that, as far as I know, he had that Volkswagen brought over from Germany. And he had all the conversions on it made to drive in the United States. He had it all fixed up, leather seats, chrome everywhere. And of course, Gary, you know this, you were the lucky person later, but I just had no idea that a Volkswagen could look this pretty.
Yeah.
But I got in it, and I did exactly what my mom and dad told me not to do. And I told them, and they said, "Don't be gone very long." I was probably gone a couple of hours. Now, I don't know if that was very long, but I went across town, picked up my friend.
To a teenager, 2 hours is nothing.
Oh, no, I had no concept of time. Yeah. And there was no air conditioning in the car, so we had the windows down. The next thing we did, we pulled over down on Main Street and put the top down. I had no idea how to put top down on a convertible, but my friend and I figured it out, and we put it down, and off we went, up and down Main Street, dragging. We went honking by everybody's house. I let everybody know somebody was driving this Volkswagen convertible, and no one really knew. I was not well known in the high school, but I certainly was going to let everybody know it was me. So that was the first night, just dragging Main Street, going by my boyfriend's house, honking at him. I think we went on out into the country where we could drive it a little better. And then I turned around and had to bring her back home, and then I came back home. And I don't think Mom and Dad asked me too many questions when I got home. That would be unusual back then, but they didn't.
They probably suspected that you went downtown, but just weren't going to say anything.
I know. My dad said, did you check the gas? And I went, oh, yeah, I didn't use it hardly any because I didn't drive very far. Mileage-wise, there's no telling what I put on that car that night.
Yeah.
But it's just a dream. Just changed. I mean, I had no earthly idea, Gary, that I would ever have a car like that.
Yeah.
And for 2 years I did, and got into some situations, little dangerous. I got into some where I got into trouble with my mom and dad. And I had some degree of freedom, to get in that car and go somewhere. I didn't go very far. I think Sherman, Texas was as far as I went, or out to the college, and that was it.
Yeah. Did you ride around with the top down very much?
I did, and especially in the summer, of course, because it was like no AC in it. Now, in the winter, we had heat. I did pick up 2 girls every morning in Denison to go to college. They had no way to ride, so they paid me a couple of dollars a week, which was more than plenty, kept me rich, because the car, back then gas only cost about 25 cents a gallon, and it would go forever on a full tank of gas. I never had to worry about it. Always, it just ran really good and was good with gas. And so the girls that I picked up, we had to lean forward to let them in because there was no second door in the back or anything. But they were happy. They had a ride, and they loved being in the car with me. And sure, I probably drove a little crazy, but they just kind of went along with the whole thing.
That's a kind of a sporty Volkswagen, and it just begs to be driven a little faster than normal. Now,
Gary, you're fixing to tell me something I didn't know. Did you drive that car fast?
Well, I said something one time about it was a Volkswagen convertible, but I drove it like it was a Porsche 911.
Well, I wasn't into speed back then, see? And so now I've got a heavy foot, so I have to watch myself. But back then, I think I was just really happy to putt along, and I was really content. Now, I'm sure I got up to the speed limit, and the roads, farm market roads and things like that, getting to college, that was, I had to watch the speed, and I certainly couldn't get a ticket, or that would have been the end of the world.
Yeah.
So, I don't think I ever got pulled over or stopped with a Volkswagen. I don't think I did.
Yeah.
Which later on I would, but not with Volkswagen.
Yeah. How long did you have the car?
About 2 years.
2 years? Wow.
Mm-hmm. I worked at Texas Instruments one summer, and there were 4 of us. I picked them up, and we drove to the shift out at Texas Instruments for that summer. And I made enough money to pay for my tuition for another year at Grayson. So I'm totally 2 years driving it. And when I finished at Grayson College, I graduated from it with a 2-year degree, which would not do me much good. And I knew I had to go on and do something different. But 2 years was all I had it. And so that's another chapter in my life there.
Yeah. Were you, was there any kind of emotion involved when you sold it, in terms of, boy, I'm going to miss that? Or was it just kind of, okay, it was just an event, we sold the car?
I think I had reached a point in my life where I knew I had to do something to move on. Like I said to many people, my goal was to get away from my mom and dad, to move away from home, to be independent.
Yeah, I get that.
And as long as I had that Volkswagen, I couldn't go on to college because I was having to pull money together to pay for another 2 years of college. And I really never thought I would do that. But somebody I dated planted a little idea in my head and a little seed that kept me going. And I realized that I needed to go on and get my degree. So selling the car the money I got from it was one way to get on with my life. And I knew I had to do that.
Yeah.
Yes, I cried when the car was driven off, but I kept it together. I don't know of anyone else that really called or asked about the car except the person that bought it. And Gary, I don't think I thought about it that way. I realized it was my next step in life. And when I did get off to college without a car, I did miss it for a little bit.
Yeah.
But being on campus, I could walk to, anywhere I needed. So,
is there a certain or special memory that comes to mind driving the car during those 2 years, either whether it's in the summer or in the spring, fall, whatever? Is there a memory that stands out driving the car?
I'm trying to think that there was an incident of coming home from college at Grayson on a back road that at that time, and it still is a farm market road. It's I think it's 131.
Yeah.
It had been raining for several days, and this was a low area on 131, and there was a bridge, and I was by myself, and the water was over the bridge. And I didn't know to do anything else except shift down gears and go through it. I lost traction and I was floating.
Oh, my.
In a Volkswagen convertible.
Wow.
And as I floated, which in my mind was probably it seemed like forever, but I'm sure it was only a few seconds. I shifted, put the clutch down, and I shifted all the way down to first to see if I could do anything different. And I probably said a quick little prayer, but all of a sudden the wheels caught the road and I shifted from first into second, and I got the heck out of there as fast as I could.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I thought, here we go. I'm going to be dead. They're going to find me in the creek in this Volkswagen convertible. That was probably the only scary moment that I really ever had with it. And that was the only time I ever had a real problem.
Yeah.
Drove it no matter what. But
is there more of a happy memory that stands out? Or are there a bunch of them?
Well, I think a lot of, just because I was not popular in high school, I mean, people knew me, but I wasn't popular. When people that were popular saw me driving the Volkswagen convertible and put two and two together, I kind of elevated in the status of who was I. And a lot of my friends in high school had already gone off to college, but I had stayed at home. Of course, I had no way of going off to college at that time.
Yeah.
And that was that was a dream if I could do that. But my happy memories were picking up friends, dragging Maine, going over to somebody's house, parking the car, going out to the lake. And out to the lake was a big deal at that time because you could go anywhere. There were no gates to the beaches now like there are now. I mean, back then it was just all open and you could drive anywhere. And my friend and I would go out there and we just sunbathe, got our tans and all that.
What was your favorite place to go out there?
I think the Burns Run and Sunset Beach, if I'm not mistaken. And we'd drive the car out there and we'd park it, and then we'd climb down the bluff down to the sandy beach and tan. And I'm sure we ate a little bit of food, and I was as skinny as I could be, so I didn't eat much. But anyway, I wish I was that way now. But we just had fun. Turn the transistor radio, if you remember those. Turn that on and listen to music. And probably the only funny thing was that the car sometimes wouldn't start. And that was maybe not a funny part, but I look back on it and I laugh about it because I had to explain that to the possible new owner, and Dad couldn't understand it either. The car just wouldn't start. Dad would take everything apart. And of course, he didn't know anything about Volkswagens, the engine in the front and all that. And we never could figure out why. So it wouldn't start. And here we are stuck at the beach. And the friend and I, happy-go-lucky, we just go, let's just go back down to the beach for a while and sunbathe some more. And that's what we did. And then when we got ready, we thought, well, we'll leave now. So we got back up there. The car started. The Volkswagen, it was ready to go.
Yeah.
And the first time, it wasn't ready to go. So now it's ready to go. So I said, well, okay, where do you want to go now? So going downtown, going to eat at a drive-through or a drive-in there at Watson's in downtown Denison was a big deal. And to be in a Volkswagen convertible, there was only one other person I knew that had a Volkswagen convertible. And that was it. Yeah. So I was, I was a novelty to have that car.
Yeah.
And
now was Sonic, had it been built over there?
No.
No? Okay.
No, I don't think so. Now, Gary, I might be wrong. There was a Watson's drive-in that was built kind of like a Sonic.
Yeah.
And it was out on the highway, maybe 92 or 69 that goes through Denison.
Uh-huh.
And you could go there. But mainly, we went to Watson's, which is down there on the corner of Main. And
yeah.
I forget the street, the cross street, Tone or something maybe.
Yeah.
But sat in the car and ate, had the top down, especially, to show off. That was the whole point, I think.
Yeah.
And I did get invited to go to the city of Denison, and Sherman was hosting some cadets that had been flown in to Parent Air Force Base. And I was invited along with some other girls I knew and some that I didn't know to meet at a bank in Sherman. And we got on a bus and we were driven out to Tanglewood. And the cadets were out there at Tanglewood.
So that's where the start with the Tanglewood love came.
Probably so.
Yeah.
I rode the bus out there, but I didn't have the Volkswagen with me. I had to park it at the bank. So one of the girls, we sat on the edge of the pool and talked to a couple of cadets, and a couple of them were really interested in who we were, and I don't know what else, can't imagine. But when it was time to go, they didn't want to go either. So somehow we made plans that we'd meet back up and I would pick them up in my car. Well, they didn't know I had a Volkswagen convertible. So we drove back I rode back in the bus to the bank in Sherman, and one girl named Sharon Ballou, who was a couple of years younger than me, she wanted to go along.
Sharon
Ballou.
Did she have a brother?
She might have. She had a sister, and I think they lived over there in the east part of Denison. Maybe she had a brother.
Were they on the corner of Myrick, and I don't remember the other street.
Maybe so, yeah. And I had not ever known, I didn't know her real well. Yeah. But we became friends instantly that night. She couldn't believe. She said, "This is your Volkswagen?" And I said, "Yes, it is." And so we kind of I think she was getting ready to go to college too. So maybe she was a couple of years younger, and then the brother and sister too. So we went back and picked up these two cadets. And this is where I get in trouble. I stayed until 4 a.m.
Oh my. Oh
Nothing.
My.
Absolutely innocent, totally sweet, nice, me and Sharon Ballou. And we went to Sharon's house, watched TV, talked, played card games. And then I had to take them to the bus station on downtown Main Street, and they had to catch a bus like at 5 a.m.
Ooh.
You have no idea what it was like when I managed to get home. My mom and dad were sitting in the living room waiting, and so was my brother. For some reason, they had to wake my brother up, and I was in a lot of trouble. Oh, and of course, they imagined I was in a ditch somewhere dead.
Yeah,
and I was completely clueless. I just had a wonderful time, free, did what I wanted to do. Two cadets from Kansas and somewhere else left with my address and my name, and we actually kept in contact with each other for a while. So I imagine that was a happy memory.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, that to me, that's kind of like what growing up and being a teenager is or was. Let me say was. It's a
Yeah,
whole lot different now.
I know.
But just the idea of just having fun, innocent fun,
Hmm.
and but losing track of time. And I've done that. I did that with my parents, and
Hmm.
I got in big trouble too. So
Well, you and I both went on to marry and have children. So my children or your children might have pulled that on you. I certainly had that. A lot of that happened to me. But I can't compare it to my life. It was just different. It was a
yeah,
different time,
yeah,
and
it really was.
times have changed. So,
Yeah, I look back on those days, and and that's part of the reason I started this podcast is the nostalgia aspect of going
mhm.
back and reliving some of those memories and thinking back of how simple times were and
Yes.
how innocent things were back then.
Hmm.
And I mean, I've got a ton of great memories with that
Oh,
car. And if anybody hasn't figured it out yet, my parents bought the car for me. So that was my first car. And it was a blast, absolute
how
blast.
did you hear about the car being for sale? Did you? Was there an ad in the paper, or did you hear maybe my brother talk about it, or what?
I don't remember.
I think we put an ad in the paper, but I remember you were my brother, who's 5.5 years younger than me.
Hmm.
Y'all were friends or something,
Uh-huh.
and Keith knew you. And when you and your dad came to look at the car, I don't know if Keith even came out because there's such a difference in our age.
Hmm.
5.5 years is a big difference
Yeah.
between a sister and a brother. But
Yeah,
I
I,
think,
I think it was probably through the classified ad in the paper.
okay.
Um, and I was 15 at the time.
Uh,
So I was still, so I had my learner's permit and all that good stuff.
uh-huh.
And I think what prompted buying the Volkswagen was um, I had gotten my learner's permit, and my parents would let me drive, and had gone to a friend's house, and
Hmm.
my mother came to pick me up, and I was going to drive home,
Yeah.
and something I was about to pull out into the street, and I remember turning around and looking, and this guy, the car was out enough to where the front fender was kind of out there, and he hit the
Yeah.
front fender. And
Oh,
so I think that kind of prompted my parents to try to find a car for me so I wouldn't mess up the,
messed
the
up their
family
car.
car. Yeah. So, but I'm glad that however we found it. I'm glad we found it because
Mhm.
it was such an enjoyable car. And
I think I think the Airman, I keep thinking about him, bless his heart. He probably, when he came back to the United States from Germany, I bet you anything he probably married, and the wife probably said, "This car's not going to go or do right for a family." Maybe he already had a kid or whatever. He
yeah,
probably traded it in for a Chevrolet there at Stakely Chevrolet. But I always think about, I wonder if he had as much fun with the Volkswagen as I did, or you did, or whoever else was going to be driving that car.
yeah,
Uh, it changed my life
yeah,
for the good. It
yeah,
changed it for the rest of my life. My life was different. It opened up a dream in my life, and it made me realize that my dream could be made into something true. I could do what I wanted to do. And I guess the car gave me a sense of independence,
uh-huh.
assurance,
Confidence.
confidence.
Yep.
Oh, yes, big time. And even my own children, I sent a message yesterday to my oldest son. I said, "Do you have the picture of the Volkswagen?" Because I'd been trying to find the picture. And he said, "No, Mom, I don't think I do." And I said, "That's okay." he called me a little bit later and he said, I need to know the story about this Volkswagen. And what was the deal about it?
So he hadn't heard the story of it.
No, and son, he's 45, and he has the wisdom to know that something is important. And he said, so yesterday evening, I told him the story of the Volkswagen. And he knows a little bit about Denison. His grandparents lived here, and his father was from Denison. So we were able to connect there with about the stories about the Volkswagen. And he had never heard it. So,
yeah.
And I still can't find the picture of the Volkswagen.
No worries.
Yeah, no, one of the kids got it, but
there's a lot of stories like this that haven't been passed down or haven't been talked about. And part of the reason, one of the other reasons I started the podcast is I read an article one time. I forgot the guy's name, but he lived in Colorado, outside of Denver. He was, when he was a kid, he wanted the GTO.
Yes.
He found a GTO, and he and his dad, they butted heads, and they had relationship issues, which probably most young guys had at that time. I know I did. But his dad found a Camaro and brought it to this guy, and that was one of those big life moments for him in a relationship with his dad. Plus, it was a couple of $100 cheaper than the GTO. So they bought the Camaro, and he drives it. He goes into the service. He comes back home from the service, and he's driving around in a truck. I don't know if it's a pickup, big truck, whatever. But he was broadsided at an intersection while driving that truck, and he went. They had to put him in a coma, or he went into a coma, and unfortunately, with head injuries, sometimes those things show up later on with extreme memory loss and things like that. And this guy was a master electrician in his home in where he lived in Colorado, and it got to the point where he couldn't even finish or do the exams to continue his certification because of that head injury started bothering him, and he was trying to connect with his son in better than what this guy did with his dad. And so they used that Camaro. He still had the Camaro as an older adult. Oh, I say older, 50s. That at this point, that's young now. But so he kept it, and he was able to work on it with his son. And they acknowledged in this article that there would come a time where he wouldn't have the memories of the car. And that that hit me. I'm thinking, there's so many stories out there that people need to hear. And so that's another reason why I started doing this podcast. So people need to know the stories.
I'm sure there are a lot of, all over the country, people that were changed forever because of a car. Yeah. And for that young man, I'm sure it probably changed him. I hope it helped him and his father come together a little bit.
Yeah, I think it did. So the guy's father, he would take his dad riding around in a Camaro, and his dad kind of softened up towards the end of his life. And of course, he passed. And then it helped him with the relationship with his son. So it was cool. It was cool.
I think my father was closer to me once the Volkswagen was in my life. I always had trouble getting it in reverse. So I had to take both hands and push down on the gear shift to get it to go in reverse. My friends all laughed when I had to do that, but I said, you get in the seat and you try to do it. and I proved the point to them. It was something we couldn't do. So,
Yeah.
Dad and I worked on it. And he said, do it the way you feel is best for you. So 2 hands to push it down into reverse and whatever. I didn't go in reverse very often. That's for sure. But I think Dad probably enjoyed tinkering with it a little bit, even when he couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. The fact that it wouldn't start sometimes, it just puzzled him. And I think he probably, at that time you didn't get on internet and Google. That was not a thing. So where did my dad go to get any kind of information? He might have checked a book out or asked his friends about, do you know anything about a Volkswagen? But where I live out here, there's a lady down the street that comes in from work every day, and she's got a red Volkswagen convertible with a tan rag top. And she goes by in the afternoon coming home from work, and it always, when she goes by, I'm like, there goes the Volkswagen convertible. I wonder, and of course they still make them. You have to order them out of Mexico or something now. I don't know.
I think so.
But my mother, though, I was going to get to this with my mother. She got kind of upset with me when I sold it. In fact, Mother would pout when she got upset. And she was pouting right down to the last minute. And Dad packed my stuff up to take me down to Sam Houston State University. Mother wouldn't speak to me or talk to me. And I think it had something to do with the Volkswagen convertible, me selling it, giving it up. I think it hurt her more than anything, and I didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah.
She had probably sacrificed a lot for it. And she didn't. Dad, of course, drove me down there and helped me get my things in the dorm, and then left me there. And Mother didn't even tell me bye or anything when she left that morning for work. So she goes to work. Dad takes me down to Huntsville to Sam Houston, and then comes back home. And that night, they try to call me just to see how I'm doing. Well, I didn't know it, but I'd moved out of that room during that day. The girl walked in, my roommate, with a pot of marijuana growing.
Oh gosh!
and she said, and she had a horse at a stable outside of Huntsville. But anyway, she said, we're going to be having marijuana in this room. And I thought, oh no, I can't do that. I want to be a school teacher. I've got to keep myself clean.
Yeah.
So anyway, I moved out of that room. And so Mom and Dad, that night, they couldn't find me. I'd already been to one of the joints. They called it the beer joints out in the country with a couple of guys in a pickup truck. But see, that Volkswagen, I think, upset my mother. So that night, when they couldn't find me, my mother dropped. All of those feelings went away of being mad at me. And she was so happy to hear my voice.
Yeah.
And that I was alive. She forgave me in some form or shape or way. And that was it. And she never talked about it. I never talked about it either.
Yeah.
So the Volkswagen brought along so many good memories, but I had to give it up to move on to the next step in my life.
Yeah.
And
well, I've got one more question about the car.
Okay.
Let's say today you're driving around and a song comes up on the radio.
Oh no.
What song would take you back to a time when you were driving around in the Volkswagen?
Well, let's see, 68 to 70. Probably a song by the Beatles. There was a group called Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And he sang a song, Jeremiah and the Bullfrog.
Uh-huh.
And there was one that had a real good rhythm to it. I even played it for my fifth graders when I taught school. I'm not for sure about the name of it, but that was the one that when that song came on, Jeremiah and the Bullfrog, the beat in it, the rhythm, we would have the top down, and I swear that Volkswagen was probably going along with the beat of it too.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't matter where we were or what we were doing. The music always took us away. And my friend and I both were hopelessly in love with two different guys. And the songs that we heard, especially the Beatles, and I can't right now tell you a song that would be Michelle was a popular song.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably those songs from the Beatles or Creedence Clearwater. I've never been good at remembering names, but I held on to a bunch of those albums for a long time, thinking I might someday go back and revisit the music. But definitely would bring back a memory if I heard those songs.
Well, just think, going forward from here, you're going to be driving in your car and those songs will start popping up on the radio.
I know you have to go to one of those stations where they play the oldies but goodies,
Yeah.
And I hear them, and I can actually sing along with them. But to just tell me now, sing that song right now, Vickie, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I have to hear the music, hear the radio, and hear the song, and then I go into my little trance, and I can sing along with it.
Well,
Now,
when you said Creedence Clearwater, the song that popped into my mind, I don't remember the name of the song, but it's "Do Do Do Looking Out My Back Door." That
Yes.
I've listened to that one, and there's another one, "Run Through the Jungle." And,
Oh, yeah. I can't tell you the name of that either. But is
yeah,
that the
I
name?
don't know the name of it. I can
Yeah.
remember the song, but
Yeah.
it was still playing on the radio when I was in high school, so I
Yeah.
got to enjoy it. So
Well, it lasted a long time then.
it did, yeah, had a long shelf life. So, well, cool. We're coming up on maybe 45 minutes or whatever. So,
Oh gosh, well, I was afraid I wouldn't be able to talk very long.
oh no, this has been great. I've loved listening to the stories of going. Oh, one more question. Sorry. When you were dragging Main Street, was it still a serpentine thing down there with the little toadstools? Do you remember?
I don't remember those.
Okay.
They did come in and build those out, didn't they? Where the road, did they change Main to, I think they changed it to where it was just two lanes. I mean, one going one way and one going the other way.
Yeah. They got rid of the serpentine and then just doing two-way. So
I don't think they had those then, maybe, or they were about to do it. There were two lanes going east and two lanes going west. That way you could come up real close to somebody and you basically could stop traffic to talk.
Yeah.
Now, imagine some moms and dads that were downtown maybe to go shopping or do something that would get very, very upset with teenagers who stopped their Volkswagen Beetle to talk to a boy. But yeah, that's the way it was. And my cousins came up to visit, and I never will forget. They were from El Dorado, Texas, and they lived out on a chicken ranch. And they came up, and I took them down Main Street, and of course we had the top down. And my cousin was 1 year younger than me. He just could not get enough of it. You do this all the time? Yeah, we do all the time. And you don't mind, your parents don't mind you do? No, they don't know I'm doing it. Maybe they did and they just didn't talk about it. Yeah. He said, "This is great. Where are the girls?" And I'm like, "Well, look this way, look that way. You'll find them." And it was a big deal to him. I mean, this country boy from a chicken ranch was downtown Main Street in Denison, dragging Main in a convertible. Yeah. So that's my last story, I guess.
Yeah, well, it was great. These have all been great. So I sure appreciate you taking the time to do this recording.
Well, thank you, Gary.
The recording's up, and I'll send you the links for them.
Okay.
And who knows, maybe your daughter will listen to this and kind of get a better idea and going, okay, well, Mom was pretty cool after all.
I wish she could see it. I mean, I've got some pictures of me, when I was younger, but she gets told all the time that she looks like me, and I'm like, don't tell her that, please, because they do that to me. But anyway, I hope it changes my daughter a little.
Yeah. So, well, very cool.
I really appreciate it, Gary, and I'm glad you were the next person to have that Volkswagen. I hope you had as many good memories.
Oh, I did. Yeah. Well, Vickie, thanks for taking the time out of your schedule to be on today's episode.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate it.
Okay. As I said in the beginning, I had a great time talking with Vickie about her first ride adventures. I trust you enjoyed listening to her as well. Be watching for more about the VW convertible, because there's more to the story of this car. What's coming up next on My First Ride? I'm constantly searching for people that would enjoy telling the stories of their first rides and how their lives were influenced by them. And I bet you probably know someone that would be a great guest for My First Ride podcast, right? Let me know a little bit about them and their story. What about telling your story on the podcast? Let me know a little bit about you and your first ride. Check us out and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, and more. And of course, you can also go to the website at myfirstridepodcast.com. One final thought. You may not have your first ride, but you still have the memories. It's time to share them. Contact me if you have questions regarding today's podcast, or you'd like to be a guest on My First Ride podcast. Send an email to myfirstridepodcast@gmail.com. I'm Gary Neidert, and you've just experienced My First Ride podcast. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.